It really doesn't get much easier than this. Hit it with some salt, an essential in almost every meal I cook throughout the day. Set it and forget it. This is actually gonna cut your cook time way down. That is perfect, look at that. Match made in heaven, quick, easy, and delicious. What's going on, guys? I am Michael Chernow, the founder of Seymour's and the co-founder of the Meatball Shop in New York City, and you are watching Essentials with Michael Chernow. I am so excited to be working with NeoU on some awesome, simple recipes that I use on a daily basis throughout my wellness journey. Today, we're gonna talk about something incredibly fun, incredibly delicious, and probably one of my favorite things to eat, steak. Who does not love a delicious piece of seared steak? One of my favorite sources of protein, specifically after a heavy-duty leg day, sear a piece of steak, sit down, enjoy myself. I get the protein, I get the iron, and I'm in heaven. So, first things first, we have an awesome Porterhouse steak here. It's a big steak, just how I like it. What I like to do with steak for the first thing is get it out of the fridge about a half an hour before you want to cook it. You want to get that steak down to room temperature before you put it on the pan to cook, all right? That's going to help the cooking process. It actually tenderizes the meat a little bit, and it really just makes for a better cook, okay? So, there's two ingredients that I use outside of the steak to cook steak. Very, very simple. I use kosher salt, and I use olive oil. Those are the two ingredients that I use, nothing more, nothing less. So, steak is down to room temp. Okay? I've got a pan on the stove top that I've actually preheated. So the number one most important piece of the puzzle to getting a delicious sear on a piece of meat is you have to make sure that the pan that you're cooking on is piping hot. Now, what we're gonna do, we're gonna do a little olive oil, and we are going to generously season this steak. Generously, meaning a lot of salt. I like to use a lot of salt when I cook steak. Now, I always season with one hand and touch meat with the other hand. So I always have a dry hand to season, and the other hand I can do whatever I'd like with, all right? Olive oil, once again. Salt to season. You wanna make sure that every single speck of flesh has salt. Okay, all right, so, this is my tong. My tong is what I'm gonna use to put the piece of steak onto the pan. So now that that pan is hot, I'm gonna then add my olive oil, all right? And now you know that that pan is very hot because that olive oil immediately is smoking. I'm going to take this steak and I'm going to put it on the pan away from me. Once you lay that steak down on that pan, do not touch it. Do not touch it for at least a minute. It is not going to burn. What is happening here is the heat is actually caramelizing flesh, which is creating that awesome golden brown, little bit past golden brown sear that you love when you eat a steak in a restaurant. I think this steak right here is gonna cook for about 1.5 minutes on both sides, and then I've got this oven preheated at 375. I'm gonna finish it in the oven depending on how I'd like that steak cooked. Let's see where we're at here. Oh my God, that is perfect, look at that. And there you have it. That is a really well-seared piece of steak. It's exactly what I'm looking for. The oven is gonna give it a little bit more of a twinge just to get it a little bit golden brown right here in the center. All right, so I believe that we've been about 1.5 minutes on both sides now. And as you can see, we have a nice sear on the bottom and a nice sear on the top. I'm just gonna finish it up a little bit in the oven here because I like to cook it about medium rare. About 1.5 minutes in the oven. We're gonna pull it out. We're gonna let it rest for about 6 to 7 minutes. We're gonna cut it, and then we're gonna eat it. All right, woo! That steak is looking mighty, mighty delicious. So what you want to do when you get the steak out is you want to make sure you get it out of the pan fast, right? You don't want it to cook any longer than you've hoped for it to cook for. So we're gonna let that baby rest for about 6 to 7 minutes. We're gonna cut into it, and then we're gonna enjoy the fruits of our labor. All right, so this steak has been resting now for about 6-7 minutes, and I personally like my steak rare to medium rare. Now also, one other thing that you should think about here is when you're cutting steak, if you'll notice the grain of this steak, meaning which way the fibers are actually going, are coming down this way. You always want to cut across them. You never want to cut with them, all right? That's going to allow for a tender bite. If you cut with them, it's going to be chewy. If you cut against them, it's going to be soft and tender, all right? So, here we go. If you look here, you'll see that steak is really nice on the outside, nice and pink on the inside, and I'm gonna take a bite of this guy because look at that. It's exactly how I like my steak cooked. Oh, that, my friends, is a delicious piece of meat. Thanks so much for tuning in to Essentials with Michael Chernow. Until next time.